Hey, I'm really excited because today I get to put my new Cabela's Bass Pro Club Ranger in the water for the very first time. You know, on today's show, it's going to be all about fishing grass. Grass is always good. Bass thrive in grass, but how do you approach it? Today's show is going to be tips and techniques about approaching grass. Thanks for joining us. This is Fishing and Hunting Texas.
From Mexico to Louisiana, the Red River down to the Laguna Madre, Texas is one big playground. Join professional bass fisherman and three-time FLW Angler of the Year, Clark Wendlandt, as he takes you on some of the best outdoor adventures the Lone Star State has to offer. This is Fishing and Hunting Texas.
You know, when you look at grass, you got to start trying to figure out or imagine how a bass would set up in that grass. Does he want to be around the top of it? Does he want to be down in the middle of it? Based on the conditions, maybe they want to be in the middle. Sometimes cloudy days, cloudy, more windy conditions, they may want to be up around the top of it. It also matters on time of year. The spring of the year, I always feel like bass want to be up over the top of it. They want to be high in the water column because they want that warmth that the sun's bringing. I think he's very big. We just started off, put our boat in the water, fishing a grassy lake. And the water, that's not a bad fish. Throwing a jerkbait. Get in here. KVD J300. And I'm fishing over that grass. You can see the grass I caught right there. That bait right there just basically fishes over it. The water's cold, 50 to 52 degrees, and a lot of times those fish are really lethargic. You can catch them really good on a jerkbait. When you get in other times of the year, sometimes they may want to be down on the bottom, and so that's kind of what you've got to figure out. I have never, ever, ever had that happen right there. Jig in the grass, I jerk, and when I jerk, absolutely, I missed him clean. I just jerked it up, and then he just sprinted up there and got it. I pulled back up, and he's got it, and I set the hook. As far as the bait you would fish in deep grass, some kind of deep grass, usually it's either a worm or a jig. You've got to have the weight bait to get through it quick, and a lot of times, you know, you'll be thinking, well, an ounce jig or a 3/4 ounce worm weight's too much for this. I know I can get through the bottom of it, but the fast fall a lot of times will get a fish to bite. That's sometimes a big key. You know, when I'm about to fish a grass lake, what I think is grass can be intimidating because it gets hung on your bait so bad. And it might not be quite as pleasant to fish as just throwing something out there and reeling it in. But you're trying to massage around that grass. You need baits that'll go through the grass, baits you can flip in the grass, baits you can fish over the grass. You'll have a variety of them rigged up, and that way you don't really know what the situation is until you get there. You don't know if you're gonna have wind or a calm day. You don't know if it's gonna be sunny or cloudy or what conditions you're gonna get. So what it lets you do is, if you have all those baits ready to go, you can get there and just explore, try to figure it out. That's a good one. That sucker. He barely even fights, but he's trying. Oh, get out of here. Oh, look at that fish. The thing about it is, he's not all that heavy, but look at the mouth. That's a good one. That's awesome. We've worked our way kind of into a big timbered bay. It's real flat right here, so we're gonna punch around, needle around, and see if we can get another one. That's awesome.
Stay tuned for more bass fishing tips right here on Fishing and Hunting Texas.
We know if you found one crappie, you may have found 1,000. We know the joy of getting your boots back in the mud. We know the journey can be more rewarding than the destination. We know the great outdoors. We love the great outdoors. Bass Pro Shops and Cabela's. Stop by today for huge savings on the gear you need and the brands you trust. Plus, free 2-day shipping at BassPro.com and Cabela's.com.
Groundbreaking designs, unsurpassed quality, and unshakable confidence. Welcome to the Ranger Z500 and Z100 series. Leading the industry for over 50 years, these rigs are custom crafted and loaded with more features and advantages to deliver the ultimate ownership experience. The legendary Ranger Z series. Unleash next level performance. Evinrude E-Tech. Spend more time on the water.
Fishing and Hunting Texas is brought to you by Bass Pro Shops and Cabela's. Your adventure starts here. Ranger Boats, still building legends one at a time. And by Garmin. Fight your fish, not your fish finder. Welcome back. Let's join Clark as he shares some great tips for catching big bass in cold weather.
You know, in the winter, one of the very best baits when you're fishing a lake that's got a lot of vegetation is fishing mats. Because when you get a big cold front and the water gets really cold, a lot of times those fish don't head out to deep water, but they'll snug up under the thickest mat that they can get around. You see a ton of it in Florida, you see a lot of it in Texas, you see a lot of it up north. If you can get in those canopies of matted vegetation, you can really catch some big fish. Come out. Get up in here. Gosh, I love that. That dude right there, he was in the thickest part of that. I want to show you that hook right there. I mean, it's just buried in there. And a lot of what I'm doing right now is I'm flipping a heavy weight. Well, I've always got a heavyweight rig because you never know if you're gonna have some junk or something to fish. This is a 1.25 ounce Strike King, tour grade tungsten, 4-pounder. I remember there was a tournament on Okeechobee where punching mats was the only way to do good. And if you got your bait, when it fell through that mat, you'd catch a big fish. The setup for that is totally key. First of all, my very favorite bait for that is probably a Strike King Rage Bug. This bait right here, it's in green pumpkin. It's just a small, compact bait that you can rig totally straight. I love my hook for this setup. This is an Owner Jungle hook. This is a 4/0 right here. You just gotta find a hook that fits the size of the bait you're gonna throw. And then as far as my weight goes, this is a 1 ounce tour grade tungsten, and I've got a bobber stopper on top. I'm using Sunline FX2 as my line. I don't have to worry about that at all. This is 60-pound test. The key to fishing this bait is you're gonna make repetitive casts into the mat. You pitch in one side of the mat, you move to another side of the mat, you move to another side of the mat. When you pitch that bait in there, a lot of times you gotta shake it, kind of jiggle it to get it through, and then you just let it free fall. It's gotta really free fall. If it doesn't fall naturally really fast, which this is really fast, it's a total reaction bite for those fish, and they're not very aggressive when the water's cold. But if you get it in there, and guys that do this a lot call it soaking it, where you just basically, you're just up and down, basically yo-yoing it up and down. Sometimes you're gonna just let it go to the bottom and just leave it there. You've got to be really patient to get these bites. You can catch some giant fish flipping mats in the dead of winter. You know, how you fish grass oftentimes depends on the time of the year. In the spring of the year, a lot of times I like to think over the top of the grass, not necessarily on the outside or the inside, but over the top of it. Here's a couple of tips that talk about fishing over the top of the grass. You know, when you're talking wintertime cranking, you want something that doesn't have a lot of wide wobbling action. You want something tight because bait fish move in a tight way. Whenever I'm fishing grass in the winter, what I really love is a lipless crankbait. This is a Strike King 3/4 ounce red-eye shad. 1/4 ounce, 1/2 ounce, 3/4 ounce. And there's also different amounts of BBs in them. This one's just a regular red-eye shad. You also got the 2-tap. The 2-tap is actually it doesn't have as many BBs, but they're loud. And so basically it can be either one, and it's a fish's preference. The reason you fish these baits is, and I especially love them in grass. If I'm fishing a grass lake, what happens is the grass will basically start dying off, the coots will eat it, it'll get lower and lower. And then when it's, you know, say December, January, February, you're basically wanting to work across those grass beds, because when you get something down in the grass, a lot of times, those fish want to be up on top of it. They want to be suspended over it. They like being suspended around something as it comes into the spawn. They also like biting baits that move, that are winding through the water. This is a time of year you got to remember. Fish are gorging themselves in preparation for the spawn. That feels like a pretty decent one. Now what happened that time is I actually popped out of some grass. I don't know if you can tell. Yes, he choked it through, just like that other one. Just like that other food. I mean choke. Show you what choking it looks like. That's choking. I mean, that's as deep as it could get. And all I did is I popped it out of that grass, and as soon as it came free, you know, it vibrated again, and boom, and it was like a worm bite almost. Boom, hit it so hard. I don't think there's a better bait than a lipless crankbait for catching those fish. You can fish it really slow, you can fish it really fast. Usually it depends on how deep the grass is. If it's say 4, 5, 6 foot below the water, I'll probably go with a 3/4 ounce. If it's 4 foot or less, I'm probably going to go with a half. It's really shallow, I might go with a 1/4. The reason, what you're trying to do with this bait and what makes the bait so unique is when you take the bait and you jerk it through some grass, it's going to fall. Well, the old lipless crankbaits a lot of times will just fall on their sides or fall backwards or anything. This bait doesn't do that. As you jerk it through the grass, it basically falls like this, but it vibrates as it goes down. And so you jerk it, and it vibrates. And almost all the time when that happens is, as soon as you jerk it out, that fish, it'll create a reaction strike. The fish will just take off, and bam, he'll just hammer. And you get a lot of real subtle bites, but it's a great way to fish. If the water's really cold, fish it slower. If the water's starting to warm up, you can fish it a little bit faster. I love putting replacement trebles on here. Typically, owner ST36, these would be number 2s. You might go to the heavier, the XX strong, if it's, you know, really big fish you're dealing with, or maybe really heavy cover. But it just kind of depends. I just wait and see on that. Lipless crankbait, Strike King red-eyed shad.
Clark will be right back on Fishing and Hunting Texas.
You sons of fishes. Ain't enough fish on this lake for 2 clubs.
Really? Well, we see plenty of fish live with Panoptics.
Yep. Dang, we should get Panoptics. Maybe we'll just take yours.
What's going on here? You boys have license?
Yes, sir.
Nope. There he is.
Oh, I got it.
This portion of Fishing and Hunting Texas is brought to you in part by Strike King, Owner Perfection and Hooks, Sawyer, we keep you outdoors, and by TH Marine. Let's watch Clark give a few more tips for fishing over the grass.
You know, one of my very favorite winter baits is a jerkbait, especially when you got clear water, when that water starts really getting cold. This is a Strike King J300. There's 3 different baits that I actually will throw. A 200, 300, and then a 300 deep. The deep one gets a little deeper, and I probably throw it the most often. The reason you want to fish these baits in clear water is what happens in the winter is fish suspend a lot. And so when a fish suspends, you need to get near him somehow. And you know, you can fish, you can get on top of him and jig a spoon, or you can drop shot and maybe throw a grub. But a jerkbait a lot of times is a bait that you can fish slowly. You throw it down there, jerk, pause, jerk, pause, and you can actually get that bite because that fish will swim up to the bait when it's just sitting there and he'll bite it. I had a couple different bites right there, and that fish finally gets it. And you know, there's some grass right there. Not great big, but that doesn't bother me. Now the key is, a jerkbait is a bait, you know, you can see the hooks on it. I usually replace my hooks. These are Owner ST36 trebles on there. I replace them because I need them to be really, really sharp. And the key is, you can't bump this into anything. It'll get hung on everything, but you fish it around stuff. You fish it around bridge pilings. You fish it around a bluff like I've got in the background right here. All of that in the winter can be really, really good places. And what those fish tend to do is they suspend. They want to get up there close to the sun. A lot of the bait suspends and they can attack it there. Try a jerkbait. It's a way you can catch a whole lot of fish in the winter. You know, electronics are important in any fishing situation, but in grass, if you have them set up properly, they can help you in a multitude of ways. Here's a couple of videos on setting up your electronics for fishing grass. You know, when I used to fish deep grass, I didn't have near the tools that I've got now. Garmin has given me electronics that let me see what's out in front of me, what's to the side of me, and great mapping. So I've got all that to go. And the cool thing is, when you're vertically fishing and you don't know exactly where the grass goes, you've basically got to use all that to see it. I look down, I start with my chart. So I've got great mapping, but that only gets you so far, because sometimes I can have a contour line in 18 feet, but the grass actually doesn't grow in a certain place because it's rocky or there's some other reason why it just didn't grow. So I start with my mapping, and then I use traditional sonar and clear view, and I look at both of them to know how high the grass comes up and if I'm in grass or if I've got outside the grass. The other thing I use is side view. Side view looks out to the right or left from my trolling motor, and I know at any time that there's maybe a clump of grass out where there isn't any grass, or if the grass line is actually receding, starting to recede a little bit, so that I need to start moving my track a little bit to the right. And then the great thing is that Panoptics, that's the topper. With Panoptics, I look out in front of me. So I can just scan out in front of me and see where that grass line goes. If there's a clump that sits a little bit out, if I need to pitch a little bit right or a little bit left. And this particular day, all of our bites came really close to the outside edge. So knowing where you were in relation to the edge of the grass was a huge key. That's a good one there. That's awesome. That's awesome. That's a good one. You know, we just pulled up on this spot, and literally that's about my third or fourth flip. I was coming up to the grass line easy. I went by and saw the grass line actually on my side view. When I'm looking over on the side view, I could see it, and it made a big old point. So I didn't even have to idle over it, and bam.
After the break, Clark will wrap up with a few more tips on fishing and hunting Texas.
For precise prescription eyewear, Wiley X knows there's no room for error. We meticulously craft our own prescription lenses to fit our high-rack frames. And our ANSI safety-rated lenses are tested to uncompromising standards. Nothing but precise. Because precision is everything.
Approximately 30,000 cases of Lyme disease happen each year in the United States. The main culprit, ticks. Stop and kill ticks in the outdoors with Sawyer's permethrin insect repellents. Sawyer, we keep you outdoors.
This portion of Fishing and Hunting Texas is brought to you in part by Angle Coolers, the original high-performance cooler. Sunline, the strength to guarantee your confidence, and by Outdoor Action. Watch the outdoors anytime.
You know, one thing you've got to decide when you're fishing grass is where those fish are in the grass. A lot of times in the dog days of summer, when the grass comes up really far off the bottom, you got to flip it. Here's a couple of tips about a vertical presentation where flipping may be the best option. You know, when I'm thinking of deep grass, a lot of times a vertical presentation is the best way. Now, what I'm talking about is let's just say the grass grows up 18, 20 feet. That's the outside edge of the grass. It doesn't grow any deeper than that. And so what happens is a lot of times it comes up, let's just say 10, 12 feet off the bottom. So it's 6 feet down. You really can't see that grass. You're having to fish it with your electronics. But a vertical presentation is the very best way. My favorite bait for that is a Strike King Hack Attack heavy cover jig. This is a 1 ounce black and blue. I like black and blue. I'd throw green pumpkin, maybe Okeechobee craw are the colors that I really like the best. And the reason you go with the vertical presentation is that when that bait falls down in that grass, it can actually get to the fish. If you're fishing a Texas rigworm, you make a long cast with it, it comes over the top of that grass and it can't fall right down in it. So a vertical presentation is best. Now, as far as my line goes, a lot of times that grass can be real heavy down there. So I use Sunline braid. FX2 is my favorite one, 60-pound test. And that way, when I get a bite, I'm using a big flipping stick, I can get them up and get them out of that grass as quickly as possible. A vertical presentation, a lot of times will catch you a lot of bass. Oh, get in here. That's a good one. That is too much fun. You know, when that bait hit the bottom, since I'm using braided line, I just saw it kind of pop up in the air. I knew it was a bite. Set the hook, and that's a good one. You know, whenever you're dropping, fishing deep grass, fishing those outside edges, really what you're looking for is a concentration of fish. What I want is a flurry. I want something where I can get multiple bites. I even know guys that fish that way. They call it a scrape. And what a scrape is when you flip in there and you catch one, you jerk him in. As soon as you flip another bait back there, you get another bite. That's what you're looking for. Whether you do it with multiple rods or you do it with just one, you get your bait back in there in those areas where those fish are. Oh, that's a good one. That's awesome, man. We've gotten to a little flurry right here. Found kind of a point, and I'm really just kind of, look at the size of that guy. That's awesome. Now here's the deal. We just kind of got on this point, and I'm just kind of going around and around, and a lot of times you've got to take your time. It's great on these calm days. That's awesome. A lot of times, finding that spot, you know, you might get a bite kind of on the edge of where that flurry might take place. And that one bite will kind of key you in. Hey, there might be some fish in here. Then you get another bite. And then you're trying to figure out where the biggest concentration of fish is. Once you figure that out, that's what you're looking for. You know, getting a new boat is just one of those really exciting things I love every year. Getting to check out how it rides, how it runs, all the new electronics that either Garmin or TH Marine has come up with. It's just one of those special things I get to do every single year. You know, fishing grass is something you've just got to be able to do if you're going to be successful bass fishing in Texas. Figuring out what baits at what times of the year that come through that grass and will get those fish to bite. If you get the opportunity, check out our website, our Facebook, and our Instagram. Let us know what lakes you'd like to see us fish all around this great state. We'd love to hear from you.
If you have a question for Clark, reach out to him on the Fishing and Hunting Texas Facebook page. You can also check in on his blog or watch your favorite episodes on fishandhuntingtexas.com. Fishing and Hunting Texas is a Careco TV production. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next week.